Keanu is kicked out of a fancy restaurant for dressing too plainly. But then, he walked in wearing boots with worn soles and a faded black t-shirt. No bodyguards, no Rolex. Just a quiet man with kind eyes and a reservation in his name. But the maitre d' didn't see any of that. He saw old denim, unbranded clothes, a man who didn't look like money. So he did what he thought was right. He told him to leave, and what happened next would flip the entire restaurant upside down. Before we begin, let us know where you're watching from. If you love emotional stories that show the power of kindness and character, subscribe now, because tomorrow's story is even more powerful than today's. Downtown Los Angeles, 7:32 p.m. The restaurant was called Valerie, a place where reservations were booked weeks in advance, where caviar was served in silver shells and the wine list was heavier than the dessert menu. A valet opened the door to a man stepping out of a modest black motorcycle. Black helmet, leather gloves, canvas backpack. He thanked the valet, declined help, and walked in. The host stand stood under a massive chandelier with a maitre d' in a silk tie and a stare sharp as a dagger. "Good evening, sir," the man said coolly. "Good evening," the guest replied warmly. "Reservation for Reeves, Keanu Reeves." The maitre d' glanced up, then down. The name rang a bell, but the outfit didn't match the mental image. He looked again, this time more judgmentally. Worn black jeans, a plain black t-shirt, an old grey blazer. No jewelry, no cologne, no entourage. "Sir, this establishment has a dress code," he said flatly. "We reserve the right to deny entry." Keanu blinked, surprised. Not offended, just surprised. "I understand," he said, "but I called ahead. They said my attire was fine." The maitre d' shook his head. "I'm afraid we've updated our policies. You're welcome to return dressed appropriately." People at nearby tables began whispering. A woman in a cocktail dress nudged her partner. "Is that Keanu Reeves?" she whispered. But the maitre d' had already made his decision. "I'm sorry, sir," he said. "We'll have to ask you to leave." Keanu paused, then gave a small smile. "All right," he said. "Thanks anyway." He turned and walked out, quietly, calmly, like someone who'd lived through worse. From behind the bar, a young waiter named Eli watched the scene unfold. His hands were frozen over a tray of drinks. He couldn't believe what he'd just seen. They kicked out Keanu Reeves, the man who donated to cancer hospitals without publicity, the man who rode subways like a regular person, the man who once bought an ice cream just to give the receipt to a fan who was too shy to ask for an autograph. Eli felt something burn in his chest. Not rage, but shame. Outside, Keanu adjusted the strap on his backpack and looked at the neon lights across the street. He wasn't angry, he wasn't embarrassed, but someone else was. Keanu stepped into the cool evening air, the sounds of silverware clinking behind him slowly fading as the heavy door of the restaurant closed. He stood for a moment under the soft glow of a street lamp, adjusting the strap of his worn canvas backpack. Across the street, through a fogged window lit by flickering neon, he spotted a small diner with a faded red sign. Rosier's Cafe. Open late. No valet. No velvet rope. Just a warm, yellow light, and the smell of something real. He crossed the street and pushed the glass door open. A small bell above it jingled. Inside, the cafe was quiet. A handful of booths, a few regulars, hunched over coffee, and a radio playing old jazz from a cracked speaker in the corner. A young waitress, no more than 20, looked up from behind the counter. Her eyes widened slightly. "Wait, are you?" Keanu smiled softly. "Just someone who could really use a good grilled cheese." She laughed, nerves melting away. "Well, we've got that. And the best tomato soup on this block." "Sold," he said. She guided him to a corner booth, her steps lighter now. Back across the street, Eli, the young waiter from Valerie, stood outside the back door of the restaurant, staring toward the cafe. His apron was still on, and his phone buzzed with messages from servers, gossiping about what had just happened. But he wasn't interested in gossip. He was angry, not at Keanu, but at his own team. They had kicked out a man who had done more good in silence than most guests had done in their entire careers. All because he didn't look the part. And worse, they had no idea what they'd just lost. Back inside Rosie's cafe, Keanu sat with his grilled cheese and soup in front of him, steam rising into the soft overhead light. The waitress, now calmer, walked by and quietly placed a slice of chocolate pie on the table. "On the house," she said. "My grandma says pie fixes everything." Keanu chuckled. "Then your grandma's a wise woman." She lingered for a moment. "Can I ask something?" He nodded. "Why didn't you say anything? Over there? That you were, you?" He stirred his soup gently. "Because the moment I have to say who I am to be treated with basic respect is the moment I've lost myself." Her eyes welled up. She wiped them quickly. "That's really beautiful." He smiled again, softer this time. "Thank you, and thanks for the pie." At that same moment, Valerie's maitre d' stepped back into the dining room, fixing his cufflinks as if nothing had happened. He barely noticed the shift in the room's energy until a man in a dark suit approached. "Excuse me," the man said. "Did I just hear you turned away Keanu Reeves?" The maitre d' blinked. "We have a strict dress policy, sir." "I don't care about the policy." The man extended his hand. "My name's Anthony Keller. I own the building this restaurant leases, and my daughter just texted me from across the street, crying because Keanu Reeves bought her pie and told her she mattered." The maitre d's face drained of color. "Sir, I had no idea." "Exactly." The cafe had grown quieter. It was now well past 8 p.m. and the street outside was nearly empty. Inside Rosie's cafe, the soft sound of jazz hummed gently in the background. Keanu sat with his coffee, hands wrapped around the warm ceramic mug, his half-eaten grilled cheese and empty soup bowl pushed to the side. Across from him, the young waitress, Maya, had taken her break and asked if she could sit with him. To her surprise, Keanu had simply smiled and said, "Of course. Sit. Tell me about your life." And now she was. "I'm in nursing school," she said, nervously tugging at her sleeves. "Trying to help my mom pay rent while I study. She has arthritis. Works at a sewing shop down on Franklin. I've been waitressing here since I was 16. Keanu nodded slowly. "You're doing a lot. That's real strength." Maya blushed. "Most days I feel like I'm drowning." Keanu sipped his coffee. "You ever seen the ocean when it's calm?" She nodded. It only gets that way after surviving every single wave. She stared at him. Quiet. You always talk like this? He smiled gently. Only when someone's listening. Meanwhile, back at Valerie, tension rippled through the restaurant like an invisible current. The maître d' was no longer gliding through the room. Now, he stood stiffly near the bar, waiting for the fallout he knew was coming. His phone buzzed with a message from upper management. Meet with building owner tomorrow morning. Serious. Servers exchanged glances. Rumors moved faster than dessert. Eli, still standing at the edge of the room with his apron half off, whispered to another waiter, I'm going across the street. I'm not letting this night end without thanking him. Back at the cafe, Maya leaned forward. Can I ask you something? Personal? Keanu nodded. Go ahead. Do you ever get tired of being recognized? He thought for a moment. No, he said. I get tired of being misunderstood. She frowned. But you're one of the good ones. Everyone says that. That's kind of you, he said. But I don't mean by fans. I mean by the world. The world sees money, outfits, fame, but none of that makes you decent. None of it makes you kind. What matters can't be worn or Googled. Maya fell quiet. What about earlier? Did it hurt? Keanu hesitated, then said simply, it didn't hurt my pride. It hurt that we still live in a world where someone has to prove their worth before they are treated with basic respect. Maya's eyes stung a little. She didn't say anything for a moment. Then quietly she asked, do you think I'll ever matter in a room like that? Keanu reached into his backpack and pulled out a folded piece of paper. Old, slightly creased. It was a photo of a young woman in scrubs. On the back, Jennifer, 1995. She saved my life with a smile. She was my nurse when I lost someone. Keanu said softly. She reminded me I still mattered, just by showing up. He handed the photo to Maya. You're already in the right room. At that moment, the door to Rosie's cafe opened. Eli stepped in, eyes scanning quickly. When he saw Keanu, he paused, unsure what to say. Keanu looked up. You're from across the street, he said. Eli nodded, awkward. Yeah, I just wanted to say I'm sorry. They had no right to treat you like that. Keanu shook his head. You don't need to apologize for them. Eli hesitated, then added, I wanted to tell you, your quiet made more noise than their tuxedos ever could. Keanu smiled. Thank you, that means a lot. As Eli turned to leave, Keanu called out gently, hey, do me a favor. Anything. Keanu pointed to Maya. Make sure people like her always have a seat in your restaurant. Even if she comes in wearing sneakers and stress. Eli nodded slowly. I will. The next morning, the front page of a local entertainment blog carried a headline no one at Valerie expected. Keanu Reeves, quietly kicked out of LA's most exclusive restaurant, spotted across the street, sharing pie with waitstaff. Underneath was a candid photo. Keanu sitting in a red booth at Rosie's cafe, smiling gently across the table from a young waitress. The photo had already been shared tens of thousands of times. Celebrities reposted it. Strangers defended him in the comments. Others promised they'd never eat at Valerie again. The backlash was swift. By 9 a.m., the restaurant's Google reviews had dropped from 4.7 stars to 3.1 in less than 12 hours. People weren't just angry. They were disappointed. The Maitre d' received a short email from the building owner. Effective immediately. Your lease is under review. We don't host businesses that treat people like that. Especially not Keanu. Back at Rosie's cafe, the morning rush was just beginning. The bell above the door jingled as people came in. Some for coffee, some just to see the place where that moment happened. But Maya wasn't at the register. She was at the back table, sitting quietly with a small box on the seat next to her, left behind with a note that simply read, "For Maya, K." She hadn't opened it yet. Her hands rested on the lid, heart still pounding from the news coverage, the messages from friends, the random woman who just asked to take a photo with her because you were the one in the booth with him, right? It was surreal. She glanced at the folded letter that had come with the box. The handwriting was familiar, quiet and neat. "Maya, you asked me if someone like you would ever matter in a room like that. I want to tell you something. You already do, but just in case the world tries to tell you otherwise, here's a reminder. From me to you, keep showing up. Keep being the person who brings light into tired spaces, because I see you, and now the world does too." Keanu, her hands trembled as she lifted the lid of the box. Inside was a brand new stethoscope engraved with her name, Maya L. Keep listening. The world needs you. And beneath it, folded neatly under velvet cloth, was a check for $25,000 with a note on top. "Tuition, don't stop now." Maya let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. Her eyes blurred. She pressed her hand to her heart. It wasn't just a gift. It was validation from someone the world admired, for someone the world overlooked. Outside the cafe, a sleek black car pulled up. Eli stepped out and held the door open for a man in an executive suit. The restaurant manager, red-faced, nervous. He walked up to Maya with a carefully practiced smile. "Hi, miss. You must be Maya. I'm the general manager at Valerie. We wanted to apologize personally for what happened last night. That should have never..." Maya looked up, calm now. "It's okay," she said simply. "You don't owe me anything." He paused. "Well, actually, we were hoping you'd consider joining our team when you finish nursing school. Front of house, if you ever want her." She smiled politely. "Thank you, but I already work somewhere that serves what matters." He blinked, then slowly nodded, embarrassed. "I understand." Later that evening, when the cafe quieted down again, Maya sat at the same booth where it all began. On the wall behind her, someone had pinned the now viral photo. Customers took pictures with it, not because it was glamorous, but because it reminded them of something the world often forgets. Dignity doesn't wear designer, and greatness doesn't need to shout. It just shows up and leaves something better behind. A week later, Rosier's cafe was busier than ever. Locals and tourists alike now wandered in, not just for the coffee or the famous grilled cheese, but to sit, even briefly, where something real had happened, where the line between celebrity and ordinary had vanished over tomato soup and pie. People took photos, asked for the Keanu booth. Some even brought handwritten notes and left them taped under the window. Maya tried her best to stay grounded. She still poured coffee, still wiped down tables, still handed out pie with a smile. But every now and then, when no one was watching, she'd quietly open her backpack and glance at the stethoscope inside, just to remind herself it wasn't a dream. Then, one evening near closing, the bell over the door jingled again. She turned around, already reaching for the menus. But this time, she froze. Standing in the doorway was Keanu. Same canvas backpack, same old blazer, same soft expression in his eyes, and no cameras, just him. "Hey," he said, almost shyly. "Is it okay if I sit down?" Maya blinked, still stunned. "Of course." Yes, please." He gave a small smile and slid into the same corner booth as last time. "You've been busy?" he said, glancing at the framed photo on the wall and the fresh flowers now sitting on every table. She nodded. "It's been surreal." They sat in silence for a moment, the kind of silence that feels like peace, not awkwardness. Then Maya asked, "Why'd you come back?" Keanu looked down at his hands, then back up at her. "Because that night, you reminded me of something I forgot." She tilted her head, curious. "I forgot what it's like to be seen for who I am, not what I'm supposed to represent. And I wanted to say thank you. Not with a check, not with a gift, but in person." She smiled, heart full. "I should be the one thanking you." He nodded toward the window. "Looks like we both gave something." She laughed softly. "I gave you pie, and it was excellent," he said with a grin. The door jingled again. An elderly man walked in, hesitated, then asked, "Is it really true? Is this where it happened?" Maya looked at Keanu. He gave a tiny nod. She turned back and said gently, "Yes, but tonight, we're just a cafe again." The man nodded, smiled, and took a seat near the front. Keanu reached into his backpack and pulled out a small box. Plain, square, wrapped in brown paper. "Last thing, I promise," he said. "A friend gave this to me years ago. I want you to have it now." Maya opened it slowly. Inside was a small bronze plaque. Engraved were the words, "You belong exactly as you are." Passed from one heart to another, her eyes filled with tears. She looked up and said softly, Do you carry this around with you?" He nodded. "I never know who needs it next." He stood, quietly, slinging the backpack over his shoulder. "Take care of yourself, Maya." She walked him to the door. Just before he left, she asked, "Do you always do this? Show up like this? For people?" Keanu paused. "Only when I find people worth showing up for." And with that, he stepped out into the night, disappearing into the quiet city. As humbly as he arrived, Maya stood in the doorway, watching until the figure on the motorcycle turned the corner and vanished. She looked down at the plaque in her hand, then around at the cafe, and smiled. Final narration, voice-over style. In a world full of velvet ropes, dress codes, and people chasing status, sometimes the most important moments happen at a corner booth in a quiet cafe, where kindness doesn't wear a name tag, where humility isn't a performance, where greatness walks in unnoticed and leaves behind something unforgettable, not with noise, but with grace.